The scream tore through the night before Juliana Allen could stop it, her body jerking upright in unfamiliar sheets that smelled of lavender and old wood. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the nightmare's grip slowly loosened, releasing images of fire and shadows and reaching hands that dissolved like smoke. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing her breathing to slow, trying to remember where she was. Right, the safe house. 3 days now since Detective Morrison had shown up at her apartment with that grim expression and the news that someone had been following her. Since he'd bundled her into an unmarked car and driven her to this sprawling estate hidden behind iron gates and ancient oak trees on the outskirts of the city. Bad dream! Juliana's head snapped toward the voice. A man stood in the doorway of her bedroom, backlit by the hallway's dim light. Tall, impossibly so, with hair so pale it seemed to glow silver white in the darkness. His skin matched that otherworldly paleness, smooth and perfect as marble. He wore dark clothing that looked expensive even in shadow, and his eyes caught the faint light like a cat's. "Who the hell are you?" She grabbed the lamp from the bedside table, holding it like a weapon. "How did you get in here?" "I've been here the entire time." His voice was deep, accented with something old and European she couldn't quite place. "I am Varion Thorne. The detective didn't tell you?" "Tell me what?" Juliana's grip tightened on the lamp. "He said I'd be safe here. He said the house was secure." "It is." Varian stepped into the room, moving with a grace that seemed unnatural, too fluid. "Because I am here." That's not an answer, isn't it? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his pale features. "You've been under my protection since you arrived, Miss Allen. I take my responsibility seriously. I don't need a babysitter." She set the lamp down but kept her distance. "I need to know who's trying to kill me and why. Those questions have complicated answers. Then uncomplicate them." Varian regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Not yet. For now, you should sleep. You're safe here." "Right, because a strange man lurking in my bedroom is so comforting." The sarcasm came easier than the fear, a defense mechanism she'd honed over years of foster homes and unstable situations. "I wasn't lurking. I was standing watch." He moved toward the door. "The nightmares will pass." "How do you know I was having nightmares?" He paused, his back to her. "Because you've had one every night since you arrived. You talk in your sleep." Heat flooded Juliana's cheeks. "That's incredibly creepy." "Yes," Varian agreed, "but necessary. Sleep, Miss Allen. I'll be close." He left before she could respond, pulling the door nearly closed behind him. Juliana stared at the space where he'd stood, her mind racing. Something about him unsettled her in ways that had nothing to do with fear. He moved wrong, spoke with an authority that seemed ancient, and those eyes had definitely reflected light in a way human eyes didn't. But she was exhausted, bone-deep tired from 3 nights of poor sleep and the constant anxiety of knowing someone wanted her dead. She lay back down, pulling the covers up to her chin, and told herself she'd demand real answers in the morning. Sleep came easier than expected, dragging her under like a riptide. She dreamed again. Different this time. Not fire and shadows, but a grand hall with vaulted ceilings and chandeliers dripping crystal. People in old-fashioned clothing danced while she stood at the edge of the room, small and lost. A woman with kind eyes and Juliana's own dark hair bent down, pressed something into her hand. "Remember who you are," the woman whispered, "no matter what they tell you." Then the dream shifted, became confused, and Juliana found herself falling through darkness, reaching for something she couldn't name. The fear crept back in, cold tendrils wrapping around her chest. "Don't leave me," she heard herself say, the words thick with sleep. "Please don't leave me. I couldn't if I tried, my love." The voice was so close, so warm that it cut through the nightmare like sunlight. Juliana's breathing evened out, her body relaxing as the dream shifted again into something peaceful, a garden bathed in moonlight where nothing could hurt her. When she woke the next morning, she remembered the nightmare, but not the comfort that had followed. She definitely didn't remember the words she'd spoken or the ones that had answered. Varian stood at the window of the guest room when she emerged, showered and dressed in clothes that had been left in the closet, all perfectly her size. Morning light streamed through the gap in the curtains, but he stood carefully to the side in shadow. "You're avoiding the sun," Juliana observed, moving into the room. "I have a condition, photosensitivity." "That's convenient. It's factual." He turned to face her, and in the daylight filtering through the room, he looked even more otherworldly. His features were too perfect, symmetrical in a way that seemed crafted rather than born. There's breakfast downstairs. You should eat. Are you going to actually talk to me today? Give me real information. What do you want to know? Everything. Juliana crossed her arms. Why someone wants me dead, who you really are, why Detective Morrison brought me to you specifically, why you talk like you walked out of a period drama. Take your pick. Varion's expression shifted, something almost like approval crossing his face. You're observant. I've had to be. Foster system teaches you to watch people, figure out their angles. You had no family? Not that I remember. I was found abandoned when I was about 6 months old. Apparently, no identification, no leads. I've been Juliana Allen, state property, and professional orphan ever since. She kept her voice light, but the old ache was there. Your turn. Information. Now. The people looking for you believe you're someone important, someone dangerous to them. I'm a paralegal who can barely afford her rent. What's dangerous about that? Your bloodline. Juliana laughed, the sound sharp. I don't have a bloodline. I have a blank birth certificate and a lot of unanswered questions. That's what you were meant to believe. Varion moved closer, still avoiding the direct sunlight. But blood doesn't lie, Miss Allen, and yours carries a legacy that certain parties would very much like to erase. You're talking in riddles again. I'm talking in truths you're not ready to hear. Try me. She held his gaze, refusing to back down, even though something primal in her brain whispered that this man was dangerous, that she should run. I've survived this long by being ready for anything. Varion studied her for a long moment. Very well, but not here. Come with me. He led her through the house, which was even more impressive in daylight. High ceilings with ornate molding, dark wood paneling, artwork that looked centuries old. They descended a staircase to what should have been a basement, but opened into a vast space that seemed to stretch impossibly far, lit by electric lights designed to look like torches. This is impossible, Juliana breathed, looking around at what appeared to be a great hall carved from stone. This can't fit under the house. It doesn't. We've gone considerably deeper. Varion walked ahead of her, his footsteps echoing. Welcome to the old world, Miss Allen. The one that exists beneath your modern cities, hidden but never gone. The hall opened into a chamber dominated by a massive table carved from black stone. On the walls hung banners bearing symbols Juliana didn't recognize, and at the far end stood something that could only be called a throne. What is this place? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. A meeting chamber, a courtroom, a place where my kind have gathered for longer than your country has existed. Varion turned to face her, and his eyes caught the torchlight, flashing red for just a moment. I am Varion Thorne, king of the North March court, and I am what your legends call vampire. Juliana should have laughed, should have called him crazy and run for the stairs, but she'd seen him move, seen his eyes reflect light, noticed how he avoided the sun, and something deeper, some instinct she couldn't name, recognized truth in his words. Vampires aren't real, she said, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. We are rare, we are careful, but we are very real. He extended his hand toward her, palm up. I will not harm you. I am bound by vow to protect you. I have been since the night you were born. That's impossible. You don't look much older than 30. I am 463 years old. He said it so matter-of-factly that she almost believed him. Almost. I was 28 when I was turned. I have held my throne for 3 centuries, and 25 years ago, I swore an oath to keep you safe. Juliana's mind reeled. Why? Why would you care about some random baby? Because you were not random. You were Jemima Ashford's daughter, heir to the South March court, and you were in terrible danger. The name meant nothing to her. Jemima Ashford. She turned it over in her mind, waiting for recognition that never came. I don't understand any of this. Sit. Varion gestured to one of the chairs at the stone table. This will take time to explain properly. She sat mostly because her legs felt unsteady. Varion remained standing, pacing slowly as he spoke. There are 4 great vampire courts in North America: North March, South March, East March, and West March. We have coexisted for centuries, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. 25 years ago, the South March court was ruled by Queen Jemima a woman of great power and greater wisdom. She sought to unite the courts, to end the old rivalries and territorial disputes. Let me guess, not everyone liked that idea. Precisely. There were those in every court who preferred the old ways. Isolation, competition for resources and territory, the tensions that kept us sharp and strong, or so they believed. Varion's expression darkened. The queen had a child, you, and she knew that her enemies would use you against her, or worse, eliminate you entirely to prevent her bloodline from continuing her reforms. So she gave me up. The words hurt more than Juliana expected. She abandoned me. She saved you. Varion's voice was fierce. She brought you to me in secret, the only king she trusted, and begged me to hide you among humans where our kind would never think to look. She wanted you to have a chance at a normal life, free from our politics and dangers. Then why are people trying to kill me now? Because someone discovered what you are, or suspects it strongly enough to act. He finally sat across from her, leaning forward with his hands clasped on the table. I have kept agents searching for any threat to you for 25 years. 3 weeks ago, one of them intercepted communications suggesting that Southmarch has located Jemima's lost heir. Southmarch. You keep saying that like it's still running. What happened to my mother? Varion's pause told her everything before he spoke. She was killed 6 months after she gave you to me, assassinated by members of her own court who opposed her reforms. Without an heir to challenge them, they seized power and have held it ever since. They rule through fear and the old ways, exactly what Jemima fought against. Juliana felt numb. She'd spent her whole life wondering about her mother, spinning fantasies of tragic circumstances or noble sacrifices. But this, learning she'd been part of some vampire political drama, that her mother had been murdered, it was too much. I need air. She stood abruptly. We're quite far underground. Then I need the illusion of air, space, something. She headed for the stairs, not caring if he followed. He did, of course, maintaining a careful distance as she climbed back up to the main house. She pushed through the front door onto a wide porch that overlooked manicured gardens. The morning sun felt good on her face, real and warm and normal. I know this is overwhelming, Varion said from the shadowed doorway. Overwhelming? I just found out I'm supposedly the heir to a vampire throne, that my mother was murdered, and that I've had a supernatural bodyguard my entire life without knowing it. Overwhelming doesn't quite cover it. I understand your anger. Do you? She spun to face him. You've had 400 years to get used to what you are. I've had about 10 minutes. Fair enough. He stayed in the shadows, and she could see the way the sunlight formed a clear barrier between them. What do you need? The question surprised her. She'd expected arguments or explanations or demands that she accept this new reality, not simple consideration for what she needed. Time, she said finally, to process, to think, and honesty. No more riddles or partial truths. If I'm in danger, if people are trying to kill me because of who I supposedly am, I need to know everything. Agreed. Varion inclined his head in a gesture that seemed courtly, old-fashioned. Ask what you will. I'll answer truthfully. Are you really a vampire? I mean really, really, not just some weirdo with a sun allergy and delusions of grandeur. I really am. He held up his hand, and she watched in horrified fascination as his nails lengthened into claws. His canines extended, sharp and white. Then just as quickly, both retracted. I drink blood to survive. I cannot walk in direct sunlight without burning. I am stronger and faster than any human. I can hear your heartbeat from here, rapid and frightened, and I will live until something kills me. Can you be killed? Yes. Sunlight, decapitation, fire, a stake through the heart. The old legends got some things right. Why tell me all this? Doesn't it put you at risk? You cannot hurt me, Juliana. His use of her first name felt intimate somehow. And you deserve to know what your guardian is. You've really been watching over me my whole life? Not constantly. I have a kingdom to rule. But I've had people checking on you regularly, and I've intervened when necessary. The time you nearly died of pneumonia at age 7 and the hospital suddenly found a donor to cover costs? That was me. The scholarship that appeared out of nowhere for your undergraduate degree? Me. The job opportunity that got you out of that dangerous neighborhood 3 years ago? Also me. Juliana felt her throat tighten. I thought I'd just been lucky. You were loved. Your mother loved you enough to give you up. I promise to honor that love by keeping you safe." He stepped closer to the edge of the shadows. "And I have never broken a vow. What happens now? Do I just hide here forever? That depends on you. You have choices, Juliana. You always have choices." "What kind of choices?" "You could remain hidden. I would continue to protect you, and we would hope that whoever suspects your identity never finds proof. You could live out a human life, die a human death, and the South March throne would remain with those who killed your mother. Or you could claim your birthright, reveal yourself as Jemima's heir, and challenge for the throne." His eyes met hers, intense and ancient. "It would be dangerous, potentially fatal, but it would also give you the chance to finish what your mother started, to change our world for the better. I'm not a vampire. How could I possibly rule a vampire court? You carry Jemima's blood. That gives you the right to challenge, and you would not be alone. I would support your claim." "Why? What did you get out of this?" Varion was quiet for a long moment. "I made a promise to your mother, but more than that, I believed in her vision. I still do. Our world is stagnant, cruel in ways it doesn't need to be. You could change that." "I'm just a paralegal. I'm nobody special." "You survived 25 years in the human foster system and came out strong, observant, and unbroken. You built a life from nothing with no help. That takes a strength most of my kind, pampered by centuries of power, cannot imagine." He paused. "You are far more than you believe yourself to be." The conviction in his voice made her want to believe him, but the enormity of what he was suggesting, claiming some vampire throne, entering a world she didn't understand, it terrified her. "I need time," she said again. "This is too much, too fast. You have time, but not unlimited amounts. Whoever is searching for you will eventually find this place. We should be prepared to move soon." "Move where?" "Somewhere safer. I have several properties, some known, some secret. We'll use the latter." Juliana rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "This is insane. My whole life is insane now." "Yes," Varion agreed, "but you're alive, and I intend to keep it that way." Over the next 3 days, Juliana learned what it meant to be protected by a vampire king. Varion was constantly present, a silent shadow who seemed to materialize whenever she entered a room. He didn't sleep, as far as she could tell. Instead, he spent his nights standing guard, listening to sounds she couldn't hear, watching for threats she couldn't see. It should have been suffocating, but somehow it wasn't. He gave her space when she needed it, answered her endless questions with patience, and never made her feel weak or helpless, even though he could probably crush steel with his bare hands. She learned that he was educated in ways that came from living through centuries. He spoke 6 languages fluently. He'd studied medicine, law, philosophy, and art. He played piano beautifully, haunting melodies she didn't recognize that made her chest ache. "Did you write that?" she asked one evening, standing in the doorway of the music room. His hand stilled on the keys. "Yes, long ago. It's beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. I wrote it after my wife died." Juliana felt her stomach drop. "You were married?" 300 years ago. She was human. I loved her deeply." His fingers traced the keys without pressing them. "She lived her natural life and died in her sleep at 73. I held her hand through her last breath. I'm sorry. It was long ago, but the music remembers." He stood, moving away from the piano. "Have you thought more about what you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to hide, to pretend none of this is real. But another part, I want to know more about my mother, about where I came from. I can tell you about her. I knew her well." They sat in the music room as darkness fell outside, and Varion spoke of Queen Jemima Ashford. He painted a picture of a woman who was brilliant and fierce, who'd taken her throne young and ruled with wisdom beyond her years, who dreamed of a world where the vampire courts worked together instead of against each other. "She would have loved you," Varion said softly. "You have her eyes, her determination." "Do you have pictures of her?" "I have paintings. I'll show you tomorrow." That night, Juliana dreamed of the grand hall again, but this time she recognized the woman with kind eyes, Jemima, her mother. She was showing Juliana something important, speaking urgently, but the dream was too fragmented to understand. "Please," Juliana heard herself whisper in her sleep. "Don't leave me. Don't leave me alone." She felt rather than heard the presence beside her bed, Varion keeping watch as always. I couldn't if I tried, my love. His voice was so quiet she shouldn't have heard it in sleep, but some part of her did, and the nightmare released its grip, letting her rest peacefully. In the morning, he showed her the paintings. There were 3, stored in a climate-controlled room in the underground chambers. Her mother at her coronation, young and regal in black velvet. Her mother in a garden, relaxed and smiling, and a 3rd, smaller painting that made Juliana's breath catch. Jemima holding a baby, dark-haired and solemn-eyed, wrapped in white lace. She commissioned this the week before she brought you to me, Varion said. She wanted you to know what you look like together, even if you couldn't remember. Juliana reached out, her fingers hovering over the painting surface without quite touching. She loved me. More than anything. Then I want to finish what she started. The decision crystallized in her chest, sudden and sure. I want to claim the throne. Make her sacrifice mean something. Varion's expression shifted, something like pride flickering across his features. It will be dangerous. I know, but hiding forever isn't really living, is it? And if there is a chance I can change things, make the world better the way she wanted, I have to try. Then we begin preparations immediately. You'll need to learn our laws, our customs, the political landscape, and you'll need to be presented properly. Presented? To make a formal challenge for the throne, you must appear before the assembled Southmarch court and declare your bloodline. They can test your claim through blood magic. If you are truly Jemima's heir, it will be undeniable. And if they try to kill me when I show up? That's where I come in. Varion's tone was absolute. No one will touch you. I swear it. The next week passed in a blur of learning. Varion proved to be a demanding but patient teacher, drilling her on the intricate protocols of vampire court politics. She learned the names and faces of the current Southmarch rulers, a triumvirate of old vampires who'd seized power after Jemima's death. Lysander Corvus, Morgessa Dane, and Thaddeus Vale, each of them centuries old and ruthlessly pragmatic. They won't give up power easily, Varion warned. They'll look for any excuse to deny your claim. But the blood test will prove who I am. It will prove your bloodline, but they may argue that being raised human makes you unfit to rule, that you lack the strength or knowledge to lead. So I have to prove I'm worthy. Yes, which is why you need to understand not just our politics, but our nature, what we are, how we think, what we value. He taught her about vampire culture, the complex hierarchies and codes of honor that govern their society, how strength was respected above all, but not mindless violence, how a vampire's word, once given, was considered unbreakable, how territory and blood rights were sacred. We're not monsters, Varion said one evening, but we're not human either. We exist in the spaces between predator and person, beast and intellect. Do you see humans as prey? Some of my kind do. I see them as what I once was. Fragile and brief, yes, but capable of remarkable things. He looked at her directly. You are human, Juliana. That won't change even if you claim the throne. Some will see it as weakness. And you? I see it as your greatest strength. You understand both worlds. You can bridge them in ways a pure-blood vampire never could. His faith in her was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. She found herself watching him more than she should, noticing the graceful economy of his movements, the way his rare smiles transformed his stern features. He was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but it was his steadiness that drew her, the absolute certainty that he would protect her, that he'd given his word and would die before breaking it. It was dangerous to feel this way about him. He was 400 years old, a vampire king and her guardian. The power imbalance alone should have killed any attraction dead. But she couldn't help the way her pulse jumped when he stood close, or how she found excuses to make him laugh to see that smile. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He could probably hear her heart rate spike. You should be careful, he said one night when they were alone in the training room. He'd been teaching her basic self-defense, though they both knew she'd never match a vampire's strength. Of what? Of me, of this situation. You're vulnerable right now, isolated and dependent on my protection. It would be easy to confuse gratitude with other feelings. Heat flooded her cheeks. You think I'm that naive? I think you're human and I'm not, and that matters. Does it? You loved a human once. Yes, and I watched her grow old and die while I stayed the same. I would not wish that pain on anyone. His expression was carefully neutral. You deserve a normal life, Juliana. A human partner, children, the chance to grow old surrounded by people who love you. That's not really on the table anymore, is it? Not if I'm claiming a vampire throne. You could still choose that life, walk away from all of this. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. I am your guardian, nothing more. The words felt like a lie, but she couldn't call him on it without revealing her own feelings. So she stepped back, created distance, and pretended her heart wasn't cracking. 2 weeks after she had arrived at the safe house, Varion announced it was time to move. His intelligence suggested that South March forces were closing in on their location. How did they keep finding me? Juliana asked as she packed the few belongings she had accumulated. You carry Jemima's blood. Certain tracking spells can lock onto familial ties if they have something that belonged to your mother. Varion moved through the house with supernatural speed, gathering documents and weapons. They must have found something of hers to use as a focus. Can they track me anywhere? Within a certain range, but I have properties warded against such magic. We'll be safe. They left in the dead of night, Varion driving a black car with tinted windows that blocked the early morning sun. They drove for hours, heading north into mountains she didn't recognize. Finally, they turned onto a barely visible road that wound up through a thick forest. The house that emerged from the trees was smaller than the first, a modern structure of glass and steel that seemed to grow from the mountainside. This is one of my private retreats, Varion explained as he carried their bags inside. No one knows about it except my most trusted advisors. The interior was stunning, all clean lines and open spaces with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the valley below. The windows were treated with some kind of film that blocked UV rays, allowing Varion to move freely even during the day. It's beautiful, Juliana breathed, moving to the windows. I had it built 50 years ago when I needed somewhere to think, somewhere away from court politics and ancient grudges. He set down the bags. You'll be safe here while we finalize preparations for your challenge. How long until we go to South March? 2 weeks. Long enough for you to master the protocols and for me to arrange proper security. He moved to stand beside her at the window. Are you certain this is what you want? Once we begin this path, there's no turning back. I'm certain. Scared, but certain. Fear is wisdom. Only fools face danger without it. She looked up at him, this ancient being who'd appointed himself her protector. Why do you really care so much? About me? About finishing my mother's work? Varion was quiet for a long moment. I am very old, Juliana. I have seen empires rise and fall, watched humanity transform itself a dozen times over, and in all that time, I have rarely met anyone who tried to make things better rather than simply accumulating power. Your mother was one of those rare souls. She believed our world could be more than endless territorial squabbles and predation. And you think I can succeed where she failed? I think you have a chance, and that's more than we've had in 25 years. That night, after an early dinner, Juliana retired to the guest room Varion had prepared. Exhaustion from the journey and the constant stress crashed over her, pulling her into sleep almost immediately. The dreams came quickly, dark and confused, full of reaching shadows and voices calling her name. She was running through the grand hall from her earlier dreams, but now it was burning, flames consuming the tapestries and carved wood. She could hear her mother screaming, could smell smoke and blood. Please, she whimpered in her sleep, tears leaking from her closed eyes. Please don't leave me. I need you. I can't do this alone. Cool fingers brushed her forehead, gentle as silk. You are not alone. You will never be alone again. Varion's voice so close she should have woken, but the nightmare's grip was too strong, holding her under. I couldn't if I tried, my love. The words were barely a whisper. I am yours. Now and always, I swear it. Something in his tone, the raw honesty of it, cut through the nightmare. Juliana's breathing evened out, the dream shifting from fire and death to a quiet garden bathed in moonlight. Varion was there, sitting beside her on a stone bench, and she felt completely safe. When she woke in the morning, she remembered only fragments of the nightmare, nothing of the comfort that had followed. But she felt rested in a way she hadn't in weeks, and when she went downstairs, she found Varion in the kitchen making coffee. You don't drink coffee, she observed. No, but you do. I thought you might want some. Such a small gesture, but it warmed her. Thank you. They fell into a routine over the following days. Mornings were spent studying, with Varion drilling her on court protocols and vampire law. Afternoons brought physical training, teaching her to move with confidence even if she couldn't match supernatural strength. Evenings were quieter, often spent talking about everything and nothing. She learned more about his long life, the people he'd known, the changes he'd witnessed. He spoke of the Renaissance with first-hand knowledge of the wars he'd fought, the loves he'd lost. He'd been born in Romania in the 1560s, the son of a minor nobleman turned by a vampire lord who'd seen potential in the serious young man. I didn't want it at first, he admitted. The transformation, the immortality. I begged him to let me die, but he was cruel in the way old vampires often were. He forced me to live, to hunt, to become what I am. How did you end up here, in America? I fled Europe in the 1700s, tired of the old lords and their games. America was new, wild, full of possibility. I built my court from nothing, gathered others who were tired of the old ways. We created something different here, not perfect, but better. And my mother? How did you meet her? At a summit 200 years ago. She was newly turned then, maybe 30 years into her immortality, brilliant and fierce even then. We became friends first, then allies. His expression softened. She was a remarkable woman, Juliana. I think you would have liked her. I wish I'd known her. She knew you for 6 months. She told me you were the happiest accident of her long life, a miracle she hadn't thought possible. Vampires can have children? Rarely. Our bodies are essentially dead, preserved at the moment of turning, but occasionally in the first few years after transformation before the change is complete, it can happen. Your mother was turned at 26? You were born when she was 48, barely 22 years into her immortality. Who was my father? Varion hesitated. A human she loved briefly. He never knew what she was, and he died before you were born. She grieved him deeply. So I'm only half vampire? In bloodline, yes, but you show no vampire traits, no enhanced strength or senses, no aversion to sunlight. For all intents and purposes, you are human. Will that matter for claiming the throne? Blood is blood. If the test confirms you are Jemima's daughter, the throne is yours by right. Whether you can hold it, that depends on you. She absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. You keep saying I have a choice, but it doesn't really feel like it. If I don't claim the throne, I spend my life hiding. If I do claim it, I'm walking into a den of vampires who probably want me dead. There is a third option. Varion's voice was careful. I could turn you, make you vampire. It would give you the strength to defend yourself, the centuries you'd need to master our politics. You would be truly immortal, a queen who could rule for millennia. The offer hung in the air between them. Juliana's mind raced, imagining it. Never aging, never dying, becoming something more than human. Would that bind me to you somehow? Make me yours? No. Turning creates no such bond. You would be your own person, beholden to no one. Have you offered this to others? Not in over 200 years. It's not a gift to be given lightly. But you'd give it to me? If you wanted it? If you understood what you'd be giving up? Juliana moved to the window, staring out at the mountains. Immortality. Power. The strength to face her enemies without fear. It was tempting, seductive even. But it also meant giving up her humanity. The very thing Varion had said was her greatest strength. No, she said finally. At least not yet. If I claim this throne, I want to do it as myself. As my mother's daughter, human and vampire mixed. Maybe that matters. Maybe that's the point. Perhaps it is. Varion sounded pleased. You continue to surprise me, Juliana Allen. Good. You're like 400 years old. You need surprising. His rare laugh filled the room, warm and genuine, and Juliana felt her heart skip. 3 days before they were scheduled to depart for South March, everything changed. Juliana woke to the sound of shattering glass. She bolted upright, heart racing, and heard Varion's voice from downstairs. Get to the safe room, now. She didn't hesitate. They drilled for this. She ran barefoot down the hall to what looked like a linen closet, but was actually a reinforced panic room. She just pulled the door closed when she heard the sounds of fighting below. The walls were thick, but not thick enough to completely muffle the crashes and thuds. Varion was fighting someone, multiple someones from the sound of it. Juliana crouched in the darkness, her phone in hand, following the protocols they'd established. She sent the emergency signal to Varion's allies, a simple code that would bring help. Then she waited, counting seconds that felt like hours. The sounds of fighting stopped abruptly. Silence fell, heavy and terrifying. Then Varion's voice, tight with pain. Juliana, it's safe. You can come out. She opened the door carefully, stepping into the hallway. The house was a disaster. Furniture overturned, walls dented, windows shattered, and in the middle of the living room stood Varion, surrounded by 3 bodies that were rapidly decaying into ash. He was hurt. She could see it in the way he held himself, the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "You're bleeding." She rushed to him. "I'll heal. Are you unharmed?" "Yes, but you're not. What happened?" "Southmarch sent assassins, 3 of them, old and strong." He swayed slightly, and she grabbed his arm to steady him. "They're dead now, but there will be more. They know where we are." "We need to get you help." "I need blood, fresh blood. It will accelerate the healing." Juliana didn't hesitate. "Take mine." "Juliana, no, I won't. You're hurt protecting me. Take what you need, please." Varian stared at her, something intense and hungry flickering in his eyes. "You don't know what you're offering. Sharing blood, it creates a connection. Temporary, but powerful." "I don't care. You're hurt because of me. Let me help." His resistance crumbled. "Very well, but only a little. Only what's necessary." He guided her to the couch, settling her gently. His hands were shaking slightly as he pushed back her sleeve, exposing her wrist. She watched his face as his fangs extended, the predatory instinct warring with his obvious concern for her. "It will hurt for a moment," he warned. "I can take it." He bit down, and she gasped at the sharp pain. But then something shifted, warmth flooding through her body where there should have been agony. She felt his hunger, his desperate need, and beneath that, something deeper. Protectiveness, devotion, fear that he might lose her. Emotions that weren't entirely hers swirled through her mind, and she realized he was feeling hers too. The connection went both ways, their consciousness briefly intertwined. She felt his shock as he encountered the depth of her feelings for him. The attraction she'd been trying to hide, yes, but also respect and trust in something that felt dangerously like love. He pulled back abruptly, releasing her wrist. The wounds closed almost immediately, his saliva carrying healing properties. But the connection lingered, a ghost of shared emotion that made them both stare at each other. "Juliana." Her name came out rough. "I didn't know. You should have said something." "What was I supposed to say?" "I'm falling for the immortal vampire king who's been assigned to protect me? That's a great power dynamic. No worse than me falling for the woman I'm sworn to guard." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. "You what?" Varian stood, pacing away from her. "I have tried to maintain distance, to be only what you needed me to be, but these past weeks, watching you learn and grow and face impossible revelations with such courage, I have found myself feeling things I haven't felt in centuries." "What kind of things?" Her voice came out breathless. "I should not burden you with this. You have enough to worry about." "Varion." She stood, crossing to him. "What kind of things?" He turned to face her, and his expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. "I find myself thinking of you constantly, wanting to hear your laugh, to see you smile. I stand guard while you sleep and fight the urge to smooth the worry from your brow. I train you in combat and admire your determination. I watch you study our laws and feel proud in ways I have no right to feel. You have every right. You've been protecting me, teaching me, believing in me. It's more than that. When you whisper in your sleep, asking not to be left alone, I want to promise you I never will. When you're frightened, I want to destroy whatever caused your fear. When you're happy, I feel as though the sun has risen even in the darkest night." He reached out, his fingers hovering near her face without quite touching. "I am falling in love with you, Juliana Allen, and it terrifies me." "Why terrified?" "Because I am vampire and you are human. Because I am ancient and you are young. Because I am sworn to protect you and these feelings compromise my objectivity. Because loving you means watching you grow old and die while I remain unchanged, and I'm not certain I can survive that pain again." Juliana caught his hand, pressing it to her cheek. "I'm falling in love with you too. And yes, the age thing is weird and the vampire thing is definitely complicated, and we should probably both have our heads examined. But I've never felt safer or more seen than I do with you. You could have anyone. A normal human life." "I don't want normal. I want you. However long we have, in whatever form that takes, I want to spend it with you." "Juliana." Her name was a prayer and a warning. "Kiss me." She rose on her toes, bringing her face closer to his. "Please, stop being noble and distant and kiss me." He broke. One moment he was holding himself rigidly apart, the next his arms were around her and his mouth was on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, almost reverent, but when she made a soft sound of encouragement, it deepened into something fierce and claiming. She could taste her own blood on his lips, could feel the supernatural strength in the arms that held her so carefully. But mostly, she felt the desperate longing, the connection that had been building between them for weeks finally acknowledged. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Varion rested his forehead against hers. "This is unwise," he murmured. "Probably. But I don't care. If you claim the throne, it will complicate everything. 2 courts cannot be ruled by partners who are romantically involved without careful negotiation. Then we'll negotiate, figure it out together." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Unless you don't want this. I want this more than I've wanted anything in centuries. That's what frightens me." "Be frightened with me then. We'll figure out the rest as we go." He kissed her again, softer this time, full of promise and possibility. They spent the rest of the night cleaning up the damage and securing the house. Varion's people arrived at dawn, a team of efficient vampires who asked no questions and made the evidence of the attack disappear. "We need to move up our timeline," Varion announced. "They found us once, they'll find us again. We go to Southmarch tomorrow night." "That's so soon." "You're as ready as you'll ever be, and every day we wait is another day they have to plan our deaths." "Comforting. I'm being realistic, but I will have 20 of my best warriors with us. The Southmarch court will be full of witnesses, which provides its own protection. They cannot simply murder you in front of the assembled courts without consequences." "They'll probably try anyway." "Yes, which is why you stay close to me at all times." The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Varion's people brought formal clothing suitable for a court appearance, including a stunning black gown that somehow fit Juliana perfectly. They briefed her on the key players she'd encounter, drilling her on names and faces until she could recite them in her sleep. As night fell, Varion appeared in her doorway dressed in formal attire that made him look every inch the king he was. Black suit tailored perfectly to his tall frame, a subtle circlet of silver at his brow that denoted his rank. "You look terrified," he observed. "I am terrified. I'm about to walk into a court of vampires and claim I'm their queen." "You are their queen, by blood and by right." He crossed to her, taking her hands. "Remember what I told you. Stand tall, speak clearly, and let them see your mother in you. You are Jemima's daughter. You belong there. What if I fail? Then we fight our way out and find another path. But you won't fail, Juliana. I believe in you." His conviction steadied her. She squeezed his hands. "Let's do this before I lose my nerve." They left the mountain house under heavy guard, traveling in a convoy of armored vehicles. The journey took 3 hours, descending from the mountains into a city she recognized as Denver. But instead of heading to the downtown high-rises, they drove to an old warehouse district that looked abandoned. "The Southmarch court is below," Varion explained as they exited the vehicles. "They maintain the fiction of human buildings above, but their true seat of power is underground." They descended through what looked like a freight elevator, going down far longer than should have been possible. When the doors finally opened, Juliana stepped out into a world that took her breath away. It was the hall from her dreams, but grander than she'd imagined. Vaulted stone ceilings carved with intricate designs, massive chandeliers holding hundreds of candles, tapestries depicting battles and coronations, and at the far end, 3 thrones occupied by the current rulers of Southmarch. Lysander Corvus sat in the center, ancient and cold with eyes like chips of ice. To his left sat Morgessa Dane, beautiful and cruel with a smile that promised pain. On the right was Thaddeus Vale, scholarly looking but no less dangerous. The hall was full of vampires, hundreds of them, all turned to watch as Juliana entered with Varion and his guards. "Well, well," Lysander's voice carried across the hall. "Varion Thorne graces us with his presence. To what do we owe this unexpected pleasure?" "I bring a challenger for your throne, Lysander, one whose claim supersedes your own." Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Morgessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "A challenger! How delightful! Who dares to challenge the triumvirate?" Varion stepped aside and Juliana moved forward. Her heart was hammering, but she kept her chin up, channeling every ounce of confidence she could muster. "I do. I am Juliana Allen, daughter of Queen Jemima Ashford. I claim the South March throne by a right of blood." The hall erupted in chaos, vampires shouting, some in disbelief, others in what might have been hope. Lysander held up a hand, and silence fell. Jemima Ashford had no children. This is well known. She had a daughter, me. She hid me among humans to keep me safe from those who murdered her. A convenient story. Do you have proof? I have my blood. Test it if you dare. You know as well as I do that Jemima's bloodline cannot be faked. Thaddeus Vale stood, his expression thoughtful. She has a point. Blood magic doesn't lie. If she truly carries Jemima's essence, it will be undeniable. And if she's lying, she'll die from the test itself. Morgessa added with relish, I see no harm in allowing it. Lysander looked less pleased, but he couldn't refuse without looking weak. Very well. Bring the testing bowl. A vampire in ceremonial robes appeared, carrying an ornate silver bowl etched with symbols. He placed it on a table in the center of the hall and gestured for Juliana to approach. Varion stepped forward with her, his presence a comfort at her back. The ceremonial vampire produced a silver knife. Your blood, freely given, into the bowl. Juliana held out her hand. The blade stung as it sliced her palm, and her blood dripped into the bowl. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blood began to glow. Soft at first, then brighter until the entire bowl shone with golden light. The symbols etched into the silver blazed, and an image formed in the air above the bowl. Jemima Ashford's face, unmistakable and regal. The resemblance to Juliana was striking. The blood confirms it, the ceremonial vampire announced. She is Jemima's daughter, the rightful heir to South March. The hall erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Excitement, hope, fear. Juliana heard her mother's name repeated over and over. This proves nothing, Lysander snapped, standing from his throne. She is half human, raised in ignorance of our ways. She is unfit to rule. The blood doesn't lie, Juliana shot back, finding her voice. I am my mother's daughter, and I claim what is mine by right. You seized this throne through murder and treachery. Your rule is illegitimate. Careful, girl. You stand in our hall, surrounded by our people. I stand in my mother's hall, Juliana corrected. Surrounded by her people, people she loved and tried to unite, people you've ruled through fear for 25 years. Morgessa laughed. She has spirit. Almost a shame we'll have to kill her. You will not touch her. Varion's voice cut through the hall like a blade. I have claimed right of protection. Any who move against her moves against North March itself. You would start a war over this human child? Lysander demanded. She is not simply a human child. She is Queen Jemima's heir. And yes, I would burn both our courts to the ground before I let you harm her. The threat hung in the air. Varion Thorne was known to keep his word, and his warriors stood ready, hands on weapons. An old vampire near the front of the crowd stepped forward. I remember Queen Jemima. I served her faithfully before her death. If this is truly her daughter, then I say let her speak. Let her tell us what kind of queen she would be. Others murmured agreement. The crowd was divided, Juliana could see. Some loyal to the triumvirate, others clearly unhappy with their rule, still others simply curious. Very well, Lysander said coldly. Speak, little heir. Tell us why we should accept a half-human queen who knows nothing of our world. Juliana took a breath, steadying herself. This was it. Everything she'd prepared for. You're right that I was raised human, that I didn't know what I was until 3 weeks ago, but that gives me something none of you have. Perspective. I've lived in both worlds. I know what humans fear about vampires, and I know what you fear about them. She turned slowly, addressing the entire hall. My mother dreamed of uniting the courts, of ending the territorial feuds and isolation that keep you weak and scattered. She believed vampires could be more than predators hiding in shadows. She died for that dream, murdered by those who preferred the old ways. She pointed at the triumvirate. They've ruled you through fear for 2.5 decades. Have things gotten better? Are you stronger, more unified, or are you still scattered, still fighting the same old battles while the world changes around you? The old ways keep us safe, Thaddeus argued. Isolation protects us. It makes you irrelevant. The human world is changing faster than ever. Technology, surveillance, DNA testing. How much longer before they discover you? Before you're forced into the open without any preparation or allies? She saw some vampires nodding, considering her words. I'm not asking you to trust me because of my blood. I'm asking you to trust my mother's vision. Let me finish what she started. Let me build bridges between our worlds instead of walls. Give me the chance to prove that her sacrifice wasn't for nothing." The hall was silent. Then the old vampire who'd spoken before stepped forward and knelt. "I served your mother faithfully. I will serve her daughter the same, my queen." Another vampire joined him, then another. Within moments, dozens were kneeling, pledging their loyalty, but not everyone. Lysander's face twisted with rage. "Treacherous fools! She is nothing, a weak human playing at royalty." "Then challenge her properly," Varion said coldly. "Formal combat for the throne, or do you fear losing to a weak human?" It was a trap, and everyone knew it. If Lysander refused, he looked like a coward. If he accepted, he'd be fighting Juliana, and killing her in formal combat would spark the war with Northmarch that Varion had promised. "I accept," Morgessa said, standing. "I will be the triumvirate's champion. The girl fights me here and now. Winner takes the throne." Juliana's blood ran cold. She'd trained, yes, but Morgessa was ancient and powerful. This was suicide. "No," Varion said flatly. "She has the right to appoint a champion of her own." "Then appoint yourself, Northmarch King. Let's make this interesting." The crowd roared approval. Vampire against vampire, champion against champion. It was the old way, respected and binding. Varion looked at Juliana. "Do you accept me as your champion?" "I trust you with my life. Fight for me." He nodded once, then turned to face Morgessa. "I accept. First blood or yield?" "Death," Morgessa purred. "Let's make this count." The crowd formed a circle, clearing space in the center of the hall. Varion removed his jacket, handing it to one of his guards. Morgessa did the same, revealing a lithe fighter's build. "Kill him quickly, Morgessa," Lysander called. "Then we'll deal with the pretender." Varion didn't respond. He simply waited, utterly calm, as Morgessa circled him. She struck first, moving with blinding speed, but Varion was faster, sidestepping her attack and countering with a strike that sent her stumbling. They separated, circling again. "You've gotten slow, old king," Morgessa taunted, "and you've gotten arrogant." They clashed again, and this time it was brutal. Superhuman strength meeting superhuman speed, the sound of their blows echoing through the hall. Morgessa fought dirty, going for eyes and throat. Varion fought with precision, every movement economical and purposeful. Blood flew. Both combatants took damage, healing almost as quickly as they were wounded. But gradually, Varion gained the upper hand. He was older, more experienced, and he fought with something Morgessa lacked: purpose. He was fighting for Juliana, and that made him unstoppable. The end came suddenly. Morgessa overextended, and Varion caught her arm, twisted, and drove his hand through her chest. She gasped, eyes wide with shock, as he ripped out her heart. Her body crumbled to ash before she hit the ground. Silence fell over the hall. Varion stood in the center of the circle, covered in blood, holding a vampire's heart. He dropped it, letting it turn to dust, and looked at Lysander and Thaddeus. "Yield the throne or die. Choose now." Lysander's face was purple with rage, but he wasn't stupid. Varion had just killed Morgessa, one of the strongest vampires in Southmarch. Fighting him would be suicide. "We yield," Thaddeus said quietly, seeing what Lysander couldn't. "The throne belongs to Jemima's heir." Lysander looked like he wanted to argue, but Thaddeus gripped his arm. "Yield, you fool, or he'll kill us both, and we'll deserve it for being too proud to see we've lost." Slowly, grudgingly, Lysander nodded. "We yield the throne to Juliana Ashford." The hall erupted in cheers. Vampires rushed forward, some to congratulate Juliana, others to pledge loyalty. She was swept up in a tide of bodies and voices, barely able to process what had just happened. She'd won. She was queen. Varion appeared at her side, still covered in blood but whole. "Are you all right?" "I'm queen of the vampires. I'm definitely not all right." She laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "This is insane." "Yes, but you did it. You claimed your throne." The coronation happened 3 days later, a formal ceremony that required Juliana to learn an entirely new set of protocols. She stood before the assembled Southmarch court and swore the ancient oaths, accepting the crown and the responsibility it represented. Varion stood beside her, having been formally recognized as her champion and closest advisor. The courts would need to negotiate the political implications of having two monarchs in a relationship, but for now, no one questioned it. Queen Juliana Ashford of Southmarch, the ceremonial vampire announced as the crown settled on her head. Long may she reign! The hall thundered with approval. Afterward, there was a feast that lasted until dawn. Juliana met hundreds of vampires, accepted pledges of loyalty, and began the complex work of actually ruling. It was overwhelming and exhausting and exhilarating all at once. She found Varion on a balcony overlooking the underground city that sprawled beneath the court. He'd cleaned up and changed, looking regal in formal black. "Hiding from your subjects already," she teased. "Giving you room to establish yourself without me looming over your shoulder." He glanced at her. "How does it feel to be queen?" "Terrifying, exciting, completely surreal." She moved to stand beside him. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to try." "What happens now? With us, I mean. Are you going back to Northmarch?" "Eventually, I must return to my court, but not immediately." He took her hand. "We have negotiations to complete, treaties to formalize, and personally I find I'm reluctant to leave your side." "Good, because I'm not ready to let you go." "About that." Varion turned to face her fully. "I meant what I said before. I love you, Juliana, and I would like to court you properly, if you'll allow it." "Court me? We've already kissed." "I think we skipped that step." "Humor me. You're a queen now. You deserve to be wooed appropriately." She laughed. "Fine. Woo me. Vampire king." "As my lady commands." He kissed her, then soft and sweet under the artificial stars of the underground city. Around them, her new court celebrated, but Juliana only had awareness for the man in her arms. Over the following weeks, they did navigate the complex politics of their situation. Juliana proposed a formal alliance between Southmarch and Northmarch, the first step toward her mother's dream of uniting the courts. The other courts, Eastmarch and Westmarch, sent envoys to meet the new queen, curious about the half-human who'd claimed a throne. Juliana proved to be a natural leader. She combined her mother's idealism with a practical streak born from years navigating the foster system. She established new laws protecting humans who lived in vampire territory, created educational programs to help younger vampires adapt to the modern world, and began the slow work of building trust between her court and the human authorities who were secretly aware of vampire existence. And through it all, Varion was there, teaching her, supporting her, loving her with an intensity that still took her breath away. 3 months after her coronation, he appeared in her private chambers with a serious expression. "We need to talk about the future," he said. Juliana's stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous. Important." He sat beside her on the couch. "I love you. I want to spend my life with you, however long that life may be, but I need to know what you want. You're mortal, Juliana. You'll age and die while I stay the same, unless you choose differently." "You're talking about turning me." "I'm asking if you've thought about it, if it's something you want." She had thought about it extensively. The idea of immortality, of having centuries with Varion, was seductive, but it also meant giving up her humanity, the thing that made her unique among vampire rulers. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants it, wants to have forever with you, but part of me thinks I'm more effective as a bridge between worlds if I stay human. If I can age and die like the people I'm trying to protect. There's no wrong answer. I will love you regardless of what you choose." "What do you want?" "Selfishly? I want you to turn. I want centuries with you, not mere decades. But I also know that's not a good enough reason to make such a permanent choice. You need to want it for yourself." "Can I think about it?" "I'm not saying no, but I need time." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." 6 months into her reign, Juliana had her answer. She woke one morning feeling different, settled in a way she hadn't before. She found Varion in his chambers, reading a book that was probably older than America. "I've decided," she announced. He set the book aside immediately, giving her his full attention. "And? I want to turn. I want forever with you. I want the chance to see my mother's dream fully realized, and that's going to take more than a human lifetime." "You're certain?" "Yes. I've built a solid foundation here. My court is stable, my laws are in place, and I have good people who can help me govern. Now I want to be strong enough to defend what we've built. And I want to spend centuries with you, learning and growing and loving. Varion stood, crossing to her. It will hurt. The transformation is excruciating. I know. I'm ready. When? Tonight. Let's not drag this out. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you. In all my long years, I have never met anyone like you. You've brought light back into my existence, given me purpose beyond mere survival. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing this life. Thank you for protecting me, for believing in me, for loving me. That night, in his private chambers, Varion turned her. It was agony, just as he'd warned, her body dying and being reborn into something more. She screamed herself hoarse, her human body fighting the transformation. But Varion never left her side. He held her through the worst of it, whispered encouragement, reminded her why she'd chosen this. When she finally opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were sharper, sounds clearer. She could hear Varion's heartbeat or whatever passed for it in a vampire's chest, could smell the blood that flowed through the veins of people 3 floors away. How do you feel? Varion asked, his voice full of concern. Powerful, hungry, alive in ways I've never felt. She looked at her hands, watching her nails lengthen into claws. This is incredible. You're incredible. Even more beautiful as vampire than you were as human, and I didn't think that was possible. She tackled him, kissing him fiercely. He responded with equal passion, and they lost themselves in each other, celebrating her transformation and their future. The formal announcement of her turning came a week later after she learned to control her new abilities. Her court received the news with approval. Their queen was now truly one of them, powerful and immortal. Varion proposed that same night in front of both their assembled courts. He knelt before her throne, producing a ring that had belonged to his long-dead mother. Juliana Ashford, Queen of Southmarch, light of my existence, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Yes, absolutely yes. They married 3 months later in a ceremony that united their courts formally. Juliana wore white, a human tradition she insisted on keeping. Varion wore black with Northmarch silver, looking every inch the king he was. The ceremony was conducted in the old way with blood vows and ancient promises. They pledged themselves to each other for eternity, their words binding in ways human marriages could never be. When Varion kissed his bride, the assembled courts erupted in celebration. They honeymooned in his mountain retreat, the place where they had first acknowledged their feelings. Away from politics and responsibility, they had 2 weeks of simple peace. One night, as they lay together under the stars visible through the treated windows, Juliana thought back to those early days, to the frightened woman who'd woken screaming from nightmares. Do you remember that first week? She asked. When I kept having nightmares? I remember everything about those days. I talked in my sleep. You told me that. Yes, you were frightened, asking not to be left alone. Something in his tone made her look at him. What did you say, when I asked not to be left? Varion was quiet for a long moment. I told you I couldn't if I tried, that I was yours. Even then? Even then. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you threatened me with a lamp. You were terrified but brave, and I found that irresistible. I fell for you during that first lesson in vampire politics. You were so patient, or so determined to make me understand. I knew then that you weren't just protecting me out of duty. No, never out of duty. Not after the first day. She rolled to face him fully. Say it again. What you said when I was sleeping. I couldn't if I tried. My love? He traced her cheek with gentle fingers. And I never want to try. You are my mate, my partner, my queen, forever. Forever, she echoed, sealing the promise with a kiss. 5 years into their marriage, Juliana had successfully united all 4 courts under a single banner. The Great Compact, they called it, a treaty that preserved each court's autonomy while creating unified laws and mutual defense agreements. It was everything her mother had dreamed of and more. She and Varion ruled jointly, splitting time between Northmarch and Southmarch. They'd proven that 2 monarchs could share power and love without it weakening either court. The human world was changing too. Slowly, carefully, Juliana was working toward the day when vampires could exist openly, integrated into society rather than hiding from it. It would take decades, maybe centuries, but she had time now. One evening, she stood on the balcony of the South March Court, looking out over the underground city that had become her home. Varion joined her, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different my life is from what I imagined. 5 years ago, I was a paralegal with no family and no future. Now I'm a vampire queen married to the love of my life, trying to change the world. Any regrets? Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. That your mother didn't live to see what you've become. She knows. Somehow I think she knows." Juliana leaned back against his chest. "We did it. We finished what she started. You did it. I merely supported you. We're a team. We did it together." "Together," Varion agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Now and always." As the artificial stars glowed overhead and their joined courts thrived below, Juliana Ashford and Varion Thorne held each other and dreamed of the future. A future they would build together, one careful step at a time, for all the centuries to come. She'd been found abandoned, a baby with no identity and no future. But she'd become a queen who united courts and bridged worlds. She'd found family in an ancient vampire who'd sworn to protect her and ended up loving her instead. And every night, as she drifted off to sleep in his arms, she never once whispered, "Don't leave me." Because she knew, bone deep and certain, that he never would. He'd promised it that very first night, even though she hadn't heard it at the time. "I couldn't if I tried, my love." It was a vow he'd kept for 5 years, and would keep for 5,000 more. Because that was what forever meant, not just endless time, but endless devotion, endless partnership, endless love. And as she looked into her husband's eyes, seeing her future reflected there, Juliana knew she'd found exactly where she belonged. Not just on a throne or in a court, but here with him, building a better world one day at a time. Together, they had all of eternity to get it right, and they would, because that's what they did. They faced impossible odds and won. They turned tragedy into triumph. They loved fiercely and fought harder. They were vampire and former human, king and queen, champions and partners. They were forever. And that was the most powerful magic of all. The end of their beginning stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. Juliana smiled, squeezed Varion's hand, and stepped forward into that endless future with the certainty that whatever came, they would face it together. Always together. Because he couldn't leave her, even if he tried, and she wouldn't let him go for anything in any world. That was love. That was forever. That was their happily ever after, hard won and perfect and theirs.